Welcome to another episode of Open World Chat. I am your host, Jim Dandino, and we are joined by our mountainous friend, John Odom. John, report in from the wilds.
I am speaking to you from my car pulled over off a fairly obscure highway in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. So warning in advance, if you hear a cop come tap on my window, well, try to bring him into the conversation, but I'm not sanguine about the success of that.
John may live free or die. We'll see. TBD. And we are joined tonight by Ryan Higgins. Ryan is the owner of Comics Conspiracy in Sunnyvale, California. He's also the co-host of the Comics Conspiracy podcast and the Geekbox podcast. Am I missing anything, Ryan?
That's it.
Cool. Say Geekbox podcast 10 times real fast.
No, I refuse. Ryan is also an old Millar World head. Ryan and I first met 20 years ago on Mark Millar's message board.
I've been trying to do the math of the Warren Ellis Forum, the Wildstorm Forum, Miller World. It is a long time ago.
I was
old
second
internet.
wave. I was second wave, but I was the first Miller World diaspora. So, and Ryan was part of our exodus at the time. Anyway, we are here.
Old internet drama.
Seriously, back when the cat fancy board raids used to happen. Ryan is joining us today because Ryan is one of the biggest Sandman fans that I know, and I have been just shrieking about this show to everyone I could possibly find. Mm-hmm. So Ryan was the logical choice to bring on to talk about how absolutely unbelievably amazing the Sandman Netflix television series has been. Ryan, where are you at on it?
So I am going against the wishes of Neil Gaiman and Netflix, and I am doing something shocking called watching one episode a week, the way television used to be in the olden days, where you would you'd have commercials and you'd get up and get a drink and have to come back, the old timey television style. I'm only 5 in. That's fine. I don't care about spoilers. I know the books. I go crazy. I mean, people are already doing podcasts where every episode is 5 podcasts worth to talk about. So spoil anything, spoil everything. I don't care. I have chosen this insanity for myself. I've been waiting 35 years. I'm okay. Just, drawing this out as long as possible.
Well, I'm glad you're aware that it's going to get seriously spoiled because
that's fine.
Doesn't always cleave as closely to the books as you might think.
Well, being on the West Coast, I have woken up and had a friend on the East Coast message me when I like Deadpool season or Daredevil season 3 came out, and they're like, I watched the entire thing last night, and I'm like, I can't do that. I don't live that life. I never have. I'll watch it when I watch it. But with Sandman, I specifically told myself, I know Netflix's model. I know what they want. And I'm assuming the show is going to get picked up. I'm not too concerned about it, but I was like,
you should be.
I don't know. Well,
we can talk about that. We can talk about the massive dysfunction that is the collapsing Warner Media empire later in the show. But I want to talk about the spoilers piece for a second, because with a show like this, I feel like spoilers are less of a problem, at least when you're talking to people have read the books, because there have been changes, but generally speaking, at least on a thematic level, this is an unbelievably faithful adaptation of Gaiman's comic book vision.
Yeah, there's nothing in it where I've been like, whoa, that's so out of character for the book, and that that really changes things. Not little tweaks, but nothing has made me question the decision. Gaiman's said what's his quote, the corpses of hundreds of bad Sandman films and TV shows lay at my feet. I've killed them one by one, or something like that, where he's just I'm not going to let someone radically alter the book. I want to do this, updates and things that make more sense in a TV version. But yeah, and the most shocking thing I think in these first few handful of episodes I've seen is what they've taken from like Sandman Overture, which was the last book ever released. Was that the 20th anniversary?
I think so, yeah.
25th anniversary, something like that. That he did it with artist J.H. Williams, and kind of put that stuff at the beginning of the show when they introduced Corinthian. And I think that's where Jessamy, the other Raven, is from, because like the Raven, like Matthew doesn't show up till the second or third book. Like he's not in those early episodes. So it's a pretty interesting change, but it tonally everything fits and nothing is so different, at least so far that I've seen.
I'm going to agree with you, but also pedantically disagree with you in that we, in the first few where we have the original story, that feels much less like the original story's vibe and more like what came later. I mean, back at the beginning, you had, Dream was sort of ghoulish, and we've, it was more explicitly horror rather than just weird. And, I think he reflected that. And what we get this time is much more the Sandman of much later, sort of tossed back into that original setting. So that right there, I think, is a little bit different. That sort of, I'm not going to describe him as handsome in the books, but somehow a little more appealing, attractive, and not, like I say, looking kind of ghoulish there.
Well, I've had a long, I've been selling Sandman comics at my shop for forever. And I always have the same pitch to customers to read the first two books now, which would be basically the one oversized, they've reissued them like 4-volume bigger books recently. You can still get the original 10 volumes, but they have some newer editions that they've released. I've always recommended people read the first two because that first volume is pretty different, both tonally and how it connects to the DC universe. And yeah, it's way more of a horror title than what comes, although there's some of that later. So Dream, I feel, is different, but that was, I'm lucky. The episode I wanted to see more than anything else was 24/7, the diner episode, and that's the last one I just watched.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if any of the episodes were going to go full horror and really stick closer to the book than I thought, I wasn't sure how close they were going to stick. That episode really did to me. Again, it is different, and I don't think it goes as far as the book goes. The book goes, I think, way further. Kind of like The Boys. The Boys comic is way more violent than the show. As outrageous as the show is, I found like the comic for Sandman, they actually kind of toned it back a little bit for the Netflix show for that episode. But
The Boys comic is way more mean-spirited than the show too, and I think that's why the show succeeds. That in where the show succeeds that the comic doesn't is that there's a lot more heart in it. 24/7 got it was still a messed up episode.
It was. Yeah, and that's what I think. That's, although Sandman doesn't feel quite as, like John said, ghoulish or horror, that episode still, to me, encapsulated what the best of that issue did. Again, I think it's tough to adapt that 100% accurately. It is pretty screwed up. So I understand maybe wanted to pull back a little bit, but it still got, I think, to the heart of it. But yeah, I think they play him a little different, like he is later. But the overall tone, the overall tone of the comic doesn't really go back to that horror element that those first issues had. And that's why I always tell people, if you like the first volume, keep reading, because the second volume is more like the rest of the series. If you like the second volume, then you're good to go. Obviously the serial killer convention and all the stuff with the Corinthian, is more horror, but it gets way more into the fantasy elements and, more of the dreaming stuff. So, I think they did a good job of still getting enough of the original spirit of the comic in there, even if it is,
Well, you want to talk about things that translate maybe a little differently. Want at some point to get to our spoilers for you for episode 11, but we'll hold that off. Where I could not believe the story that they picked to put on screen. I saw it, my jaw dropped. But anyway, we'll save that. That's jumping ahead a few episodes. What's that?
The cat one?
No, Calliope.
The writer?
Holy crap, Calliope, man.
Yeah.
They put Calliope on the screen.
They did. And
I guess we're there now. We're in the spoilers. So there you go.
I mean, let's go for it. Because I watched all 10 in like 3 days because I was trying to write a review of the series or the season and get it done and ready for launch day. And then I came back like a month and a half later when they dropped the Calliope episode and the cats in the Calliope episode. And it still had me. It still had its hooks in my brain. But I'm like 8 years removed from my last Sandman reread. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding myself some of it, and the Calliope episode especially, I wanted to go back and check out the comics to see where they deviated. And it felt like they, like 24/7, they did not go as hard into the sexual horror aspect of it.
Well, Calliope is a rape story.
Right.
Not first and foremost. Absolutely. It is a rape story. There were allusions to rape in it, but the tone of it, the feel of the character of Calliope was very different. They sort of turned what was a rape story into more of a feminist story aiming at feminists. And it sort of works. It works until they try to hit you over the head with it at the end. It's like, we got the message. We understand. It's actually pretty clear. And then to sort of wrap it up in an epilogue like that, I think was a little insulting to the viewers. We got the message. There was, you know what I mean, right? But no, the tone of it, the feel of it I thought was very made for TV, and for the most part, I think it worked. But there were some tricky ones.
They went for it a lot, and I think that a lot of it, I think that it was really, really just resoundingly successful from start to finish. Right? I appreciated the added depth to the Corinthian. The Florida stuff was incredible. It felt like somehow a comic book about dreaming and a comic book about people's dream worlds. The show got at their interiority better than the comics did somehow. And I felt like episode 6, where whenever you're scheduled to watch it, that's the death episode. That's where it really comes through. There's a moment at the very beginning of 6 where Death and Dream are talking to each other on a park bench, and he's furious with her. And he says out loud, "Why didn't you come help me?" And I don't remember that. Was that in the comics?
I don't remember.
I feel like if it was, it took him a long time to get there to saying that out loud. And it felt like they like Gaiman figured out how to characterize Dream a little bit more effectively and make him a little bit more sympathetic to the audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with the comic too, I'm sure he had ideas of what he wanted to do, but he basically said, like, look, we thought it was going to be canceled after the first arc. We had no idea anyone was going to read this. So how much he really fleshed the stuff out at the time, George Lucas is like, oh yeah, I got 9 movies planned from day one. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You had Star Wars, and then you kind of figured everything else later. I'm not saying Gaiman's quite on that same level, but obviously things are going to be different when you go back to something 30, 35 years later. Be like, all right, how can I make this flow a little bit better? And comics and TV shows don't. There's not necessarily a one-to-one comparison. So I appreciate updates and changes. I mean, it might be interesting if we had the audiobooks, I think, are incredible because they are audio drama, I guess is the way to put it, because they are incredibly accurate, like almost word for word. I think they moved like an issue or two around, but they're dead on to the comics. So if you haven't listened to the Sandman audio dramas, they are amazing, but incredibly accurate to the comic, where the show does feel like it's making little changes. But again, nothing has been so dramatic for me. But yeah, things like Calliope, again, not that it was necessarily appropriate in the 80s or early 90s either, but sensitivity for that type of stuff has become much more prominent. So it makes sense to maybe the story can still have a similar effect, but you
don't have to
maybe
you don't
tone
have
a few
to actually
things.
Be as quite as explicit as the comic was.
Yeah.
No. And adding almost a sort of lost romance element to it was interesting, because that
with her and Dream, that was always there. She's the mother of Orpheus.
Right, but it wasn't presented that way, as I recall.
Oh, really?
And I need to look at it. It wasn't like there's this lost love between them somehow. There wasn't. I
feel like that moment, and when he's walking into hell and sees his ex, I feel like those are the only two times where you really get the sense that there's supposed to be a season 2.
Yeah. Well, that was what I'm completely blanking on her name. What's her name? I
don't remember. I'm terrible. I'm terrible with character names.
I'll look it up while we're talking. I thought they might just skip that scene, only because if you don't go back to it ever, then you're like, well, what was the point of this? All right. I mean, it shows him in his, that's the first time we see Dream in another form. So through her eyes. So I think that's a good scene to have, but it also that plays off through the rest of the with what should be in theory through like basically the rest of the show. So I liked their seeding the things to come, and they kept it like they did in the comic. But yeah, if this is all we get, it is like, well, I guess what do you do? What's the point here? But
right. Well, I'm going to be furious if we don't get a second season, but I'm going to be like, this is one of those, like, let it burn bright, because I want it to be, I desperately want a second season, but the first season was so good that even if this is all we get, I'm going to be very happy.
That's how I felt about American Gods, honestly, which is ironic because Gaiman did not like the first season, and then he took more creative control in the second season, and it got dull.
I tried. I could not make it through American Gods. I watched the first couple episodes, and it just did not work for me. I don't have the connection to it that I do as Sandman or some of the other shows, but I don't know. So that show just wasn't.
Oh, I thought it was brilliant.
I don't know. Maybe I'll have to really give it another shot. But it's over, right? I mean, only did it go 2? Is there a third?
Yeah, it collapsed in a blaze of glory too. It was a really ugly end to the show,
and it took like a couple of years for that second season, I think. So it felt like that just never had a. I don't know. Yeah, never really had a proper chance.
Yeah. What do we think? So, what do we think are the best decisions so far, or that we've seen from the show?
I'm going to say casting, honestly. I mean, that's not what you were looking for, but you think about the episode with, the episode with Death. I think the reason why it was really better, you can say in a sense, and this is a crude comparison, that in the translation, the images, the art is not there, but is in a sense replaced by the acting. And a lot of how you're going to compare the two media, manifesting the same story, is going to depend on those two things. And I think the casting and the acting in that episode were so good that it sort of transcended it over the comics. I agree with you on that. That episode was one of the, I think, 3 times I cried during the season. And I agree with you on the casting 100%. Desire was tremendous. Yeah.
Death was magnetic. Death was perfect, unbelievably perfect.
Yeah.
And even Sturridge as Dream is pretty spot on. He's a little bit more less taciturn than the Dream of the comics. And you get like that interiority that I was talking about. You get more of Dream through the little movements and through the little eye movements, little eyebrow stuff. You know, the way he changes his pout. It's really good. It's really good. Ryan?
For me so far, David Thewlis is one of the greatest actors of all time. He is incredible. Fargo, it's one of my favorite shows ever. And he was so good in that. And it's funny. I just completely did not make the connection when I saw that they cast him as Dr. Destiny, John D. Right.
Right.
And boy, when I figured it out, I was like, oh wait, yeah. that's David Thewlis. Oh my God, that is perfect. Again, different from the comic, but what a good actor. Creepy as hell. He just such a good job. He's one of the most terrifying people in the world. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but as an actor, he gets some of the creepiest roles that I've ever seen. And yeah, he was so good.
Yeah.
Let me ask you both a question. See what you think. My concern watching this, I have a couple concerns about the series, but the biggest one is that we are developing Dream too quickly as a character. Character development is happening quickly. And if we get into more seasons, we're going to go beyond any kind of character development that we've seen in the comics pretty quickly. Do they need to put the brakes on that a little bit? I mean, he's a much softer, more understanding guy at the end of the series than at the beginning. And, you know, they make a point to tell us that. But how far can we keep going with that? And if we stop and put the brakes on it after we've had, you know, a momentum doing this, is it going to stall out the series and create problems?
I mean, I don't think so. I'm really hoping they keep up the one-off episodes and the specials, just because I think those are nice breaks in the comic. It gives you more backstory. And if I don't see them changing so dramatically going forward. You know, he may be maybe less cruel, but I still feel like, you know, I had a friend who was like, I don't like Dream. He never read the comics, right? And he said when he was watching the first couple episodes, he's like, I don't really like him. And my response was, you're not really supposed to. Dream's kind of a dickhead. And that's becomes a major in the comics. That's a kind of a major point, is that he's, you know, he maybe doesn't quite learn the lessons that he should be. Yeah, nothing in the show so far has made me feel like that's so off course. Maybe they've toned it down a little bit, but
on course too quickly, I think is my concern.
I have an in-story reason to not be worried about it, and a real world reason not to be worried about it. And the in-story reason is they can drag their feet pretty easily, right? Like it's not difficult to slow it down. It'll look stupid if they try and reverse anything that they've done, or if they try and make him revert to an earlier version of the character just for the sake of having him be a dick in the narrative. But they don't have to keep going quickly, and he's still got a long ways to go before he's the guy who kind of effectively walks away from the dreaming, right? Real world reason, who the hell knows if Netflix is even going to be around in 5 years, right? Like go as fast as you need to. Get me as much of the story as you can.
It's going to have a long, slow death. It'll be around a while yet.
I had a streaming blockbuster.
Yeah, 6 months ago, I was like, if Netflix cancels, it'll just be on HBO Max. I'm not so sure now how that's going to work. So maybe Amazon will just pick it up, because Amazon doesn't care. It doesn't matter how much money anything costs.
Well, and of course, the big problem is Warner. Is Warner going to keep wanting to produce this? What the hell is up?
Oh, if someone's paying them, apparently, sure, they're just going to license out everything. They're gonna make anything themselves. You know, if you're getting rid of that Batman animated series, to me, that just means you're not going to do anything on your own platform. Sure, they'll keep around Game of Thrones, right, and that's it. So, but yeah. I don't know.
Somebody on Twitter was talking about Amazon just scooping up DC altogether.
But Amazon just buys Warner Discovery. Like, why not? Nothing matters anymore. Yeah.
But I don't like. I know we've had this conversation or have had this conversation in the past. They've got to see something in this future of the streaming business that nobody else is admitting to. And they're just being more ham-fisted about it. I'm not confident that we are going to be consuming media in the same way in 5 years. And I really like this show, so just get me as much of it as you can.
We had a pretty big discussion on a recent episode of the Comic Conspiracy podcast where, we kind of said the same, or at least I kind of said the same thing, that, every show ever made for $7.99 a month and every movie ever made just is not feasible with no advertisements. I mean, I think it'll be $20 a month with advertisements on everything. And it's just like you're watching television now, because I just don't see, even at hundreds of millions of subscribers, that's not enough money. Streaming service, Netflix, sure, it could survive. It's $50 a month, but then who's paying for it? Right. So,
right. Why am I not paying for cable anymore if all I'm getting is cable?
So I do pay for cable. I'm still the one, right? But I get all I basically get all the streaming services at no additional charge, except for, like Disney and Netflix, right? Because it's like HBO, Showtime, AMC, like all the Paramount, all that stuff comes through my cable service. So it's do you watch the commercials if you're watching HBO through your cable? If you're watching on cable, like if I record them, because I still have like TiVo and all that stuff. I record all the CW shows. Yeah, no, I'm old school, man. I love it. But if we log on HBO Max or Showtime, we still watch, Game of Thrones. We watch the, HBO Max because it's on 3 hours earlier than it would air on TV here. So we're on the West Coast. So there's plenty of that where we can, there's no ads on any of that stuff, but we're still paying through the cable service. So I don't know what
I put on Fellowship. I have Hulu Live, which I think I'm writing off at the end of the year for business purposes. And we're paying for HBO Max, and I went to put on Fellowship the other night, and I got to the first commercial break they put in on HBO Max, and I decided to cancel HBO right there.
They have a commercial like on the movie?
There are commercials inside the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
And do you have like a normal HBO Max account?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's weird.
I'm telling you.
I haven't experienced that.
I'm going to try it again, but it has caused me to not. As soon as this season of the Dragon Show is done, and I won't get in trouble for canceling it, I am shutting that down and turning Paramount Plus back on. Honestly,
back on.
Yeah,
how did you lose it?
I turned it off after Picard was after Strange New Worlds.
But you're going to bring it back, right? You're not bailing on Strange New Worlds. Okay.
No,
all right.
No. I'm trying to balance the streaming services that I purchase. I'm not going to leave it on if I'm not using it actively.
There is an ad. There is an ad-supported version of HBO Max. For some reason, so the cable version, there's no ads because I guess because I have HBO through cable, it's part of the package. So I guess I have
no idea there was an ad version. I don't.
Yeah, I completely forgot. The Netflix ad version is coming like soon, isn't it? Like this week or next week or something crazy. It's really soon.
I'm just gonna end up with cable again.
Well, I'm telling you, right? I think this is what's going to happen because advertisement, look at the internet doesn't exist without ads. Right. Chrome apparently is killing the function within Chrome that allows the ad blocking apps to block ads starting in January 1st. So goodbye ad block and
welcome back Firefox.
Yeah, well, that Firefox is like the one last one that's still allowing it. So yeah, this glorious like 10, 15 years of getting rid of advertisements, we are living in a golden age that we're never going to see again, because it's the only way things work. The model doesn't work the other way. I really don't think it does. I think, and that's the streaming services are finding that out, right?
And everybody's just going to end up with shitty old cable again.
See, because I'm the person they want. My motto is just subscribe and never unsubscribe. It's a pain in the ass. I just subscribe to the services. They just go, and I just don't worry about it. And they're there when I want to watch them. I mean, I have a friend who's like 30-day trial from here, free trial from here, subscribe for the one show, binge everything, cancel. I have a lot of friends that do this, and I get it, but I'm just like, I'm the sucker. I'm the sucker that's just subscribe and you get your money whether I've turned your thing on or not. But when there's so many services out there, I just don't see how it's possible for most people to do that.
Well, the solution is to nationalize all of them.
Yes.
Good luck.
Government takeover of Netflix.
There you go.
Ooh, I'm calling Bernie's office tomorrow.
They will burn the country down before that happens. Okay.
It's fine. It's already on fire. Whatever.
Yeah. It doesn't
You're literally on fire right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, it has gone down to 99 degrees here in California. So at 6:30 at night. So yeah.
Really?
Open the windows.
Yeah. It's cooling off.
It's gorgeous. All right. So
go way off track here.
Way off track. What's the worst decision you saw?
I mean, not just greenlighting 4 seasons up right off the bat. That's the biggest concern. Yeah. I mean, I nothing yet. There's been Joanna Constantine, make the show tomorrow. Jenna Coleman, just do it. Yeah. Right. Every change has been amazing. It's an old Alan Moore quote. I'll kind of mess up here. I think it was Alan Moore where he's like, I don't care what they do to my projects. The books are still there. Nothing's that, you haven't lost anything. I don't care about the shows or movies. My original stories are still around. I feel like that's, the bigger concern for me is if DC and Warner years ago had just said, screw Neil Gaiman. Sure, we're going to make this shitty action movie. Like that would have been horrible, right? So, I mean, with how much he has to do with the show, any change wouldn't happen if he didn't like it, if he didn't approve it. And so in that case, I'm fine with it. I can't imagine he was pressured into doing something that if Gaiman really wanted to, he would just put, all right, well, then that's it. No, this is where out. There's been nothing in it so far that I've felt mad about, like Jim, you obviously are very familiar with Twitter and all the trolls, and Gaiman has been, that dude's on attack 24/7. It's incredible. Most people, especially celebrities, are just like, I stay out of it. I don't get involved. People can fight the culture wars. I'm just going to kind of make my thing. He is like incredibly active in just every troll, every crap that someone brings up, whether you like the changes or not. Most of these people are just, it's garbage.
I can get missing the politics of the original Star Trek series, right? Mm-hmm. I can understand how people might be, the way that someone might be dense enough to miss the political message, or the way that people might be ahistorical enough to have missed the political message in the original Star Trek series, right? I do not understand the people who didn't see the politics in the Sandman comics. And I don't think these people are real. I don't think that these are good faith arguments that are being made. But just on the off chance that some of these people are actually trying to make good faith arguments about like changing Sandman to be more woke, what the fuck were you reading?
Nobody that had those thoughts would have read the book anyway when it came out. I started with issue, I think 50 was my first issue. So I was, I started reading comics in like 1990. And I was a teenager. It's all superhero stuff. So a couple years in, I started to kind of get like, superhero stuff is a little boring. Let's see what's out there. And it was heavy metal and Sandman and Sin City and like all the independent stuff and Vertigo and Invisibles, right? I mean, Invisibles through Animal Man and Invisibles kind of got me back into like Justice League, which got me back into DC. So it was a wild time back then. The guy that wrote Invisibles is writing Justice League. What? So I just, none of these people have ever read the book. They're not, they can't, because you wouldn't have made it far enough in the book because you're, God, late 80s, early 90s, there's transgender characters, there's gay characters, there's black characters, there's, every complaint, quote unquote, these people have, it's in the book. So I don't.
The Doll's House arc is like 15 to 20% less gay than the comic version. And it's still one of the gayest things that they've ever put on television. Right. But it's just the people that he's responding, God bless him. But also just stop. You don't have to fight with these people because they're all arguing in bad faith. They're all coming at this from a terrible point of view.
And look, there is a small part of me that I would love to see Death, the comic version in live action, of course, right? But any change, again, he's coming in and saying, look, we're making these changes for certain reasons. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine.
She is magnetic and joyful in the same way that the comics version is.
So the only things I watched prior to watching the show was when at Comic-Con, they released a couple of the scenes from that episode, because that was my one big fear of Sandman. You could do all the characters. I don't think there's too many characters you can mess up. Death is a tough one. She's a very unique character, and I wanted to see how they played her. So I actually did watch those scenes. She's perfect.
That was peak Sandman for me. Yeah. I mean, the TV show. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's so good. She's so good. John, what about you? We talked about Calliope a little bit. Did any choices that they made that you really don't agree with?
No. And, the differences were subtle for the most part. And they were reasonable differences for subtle as they were for the medium. I think they, other than I think a slightly mishandling of Calliope, I respect what they were doing and it mostly worked. I think it's been spot on. And I start thinking ahead to the stories you hope they do. You can't wait to see. There's just so many, especially those. Well, the one-offs is what I always think of.
Mm-hmm. I need Midsummer's Night Dream to be a movie. I need that to be like a 2-hour long Netflix special. Because that it's funny because the one-offs always end up being the arcs or the stories that I kind of think more not more fondly of, but have a stronger kind of emotional attachment to. Midsummer's Night Dream, issue 50, issue 75, the final issue with Shakespeare. Like they're incredible done in one or done in two issues or kind of oversized issues. Midsummer Night Dream needs to be that needs a theatrical release. They need to do that and just blow it out and make it a full fantasy Shakespearean 2-hour long, hour 40 drama and just go for it. I'd
be shocked if anybody who was a fan of the original series was not chomping at the bit to see that particular story.
Yep.
I mean, you'll see. The groundwork is laid for them to do that. So I'm in the same boat. I can't think of anything that I watched this season where I question the choice that they made. And I really kind of as I was working my way through the season, I texted my editor at Den of Geek. I'm like, am I just in a really good mood or is this incredible? And he's like, no, it's incredible. They could not have done a better job of adapting this book. So, and I do want to say, I don't think that this show could have gotten made without Good Omens, without Gaiman figuring out how to do TV stuff.
I bet you're right about that. I think you're right.
So, all right, well, we're running up on time. Any final thoughts on the show?
Netflix needs to completely change its viewing model and release things once a week to maximize, to retain subscription numbers longer, and to give people reasons to talk about shows for longer than one day, and have 4 more seasons of Sandman. I think 4 actually would work. I think they can do it in 4 with the specials kind of in between, because how far they go in this first series, I feel like maybe 5 makes
17.
sense. Huh?
They get to like 17.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like 5 obviously would make the most sense, kind of 2 books per season. But if they really need to cut some time, I could see them we do it in 4. Also, I require a Sandman Mystery Theater television show as well. Thank you.
I can deal with that.
That would be my first. That would be my first pitch. If the David Zaslav is standing in front of me and I get one wish, Sandman Mystery Theater TV show, just spin it right out of this.
We could just have Netflix make all of the old 90s Vertigo shows.
I would. That would be the happiest day of my life.
That's just magic, right?
And here's the thing: they could all those Sandman related shows, Books of Magic, Books of Fairy, House of Secrets, House of Mystery. I mean, I know those are come from before, but the Vertigo versions sort of come out of Sandman. Hellblazer with Joanna Constantine, right? Which I'm going to be incredible. Yeah, a Sandman Mystery Theater. I require all of these.
Let's just have a Vertigo streaming service.
Yes.
Hell with Netflix.
I'd be down with
it. I don't understand why DC didn't already do that. Whatever.
That is my hope. That is my hope.
All right, John, final thoughts?
I got no final thoughts.
No,
I got nothing.
You're too mountainous.
Ryan, I would like to see, I am looking forward to some of the more Lovecrafty stuff. I mean, Gaiman is so Lovecraft, something like the Tale of Two Cities. Yeah, I want to see that because that's just too weird. So I want to see, that dude, that's where he comes from is all that Lovecrafty and stuff. And so much of it pops up in the series.
Even the visuals, right? Like this is, I know we're down to last thoughts, but like it wasn't gray, it wasn't drab, it wasn't boring. It like the dreaming was beautiful and it was lush and expansive. I love that they did an animated episode to add, a little bit of context and texture, even if it was weirdly rotoscoped at times. It was like, my final thought is make a lot more of this. Just keep it going. It was excellent. It was really outstanding. So, Ryan, where can folks find you on the internet?
Comicsconspiracy.biz. If you like to buy comic books, that's our website. You can go there. We ship all the time. We've been putting up a ton of books on there. It's all our in-store stock stuff, but we've been doing all sorts of other stuff. So we're a comic store in Sunnyvale, California. If you're out on the West Coast, come say hello. On Twitter, Ryan Higgins Ryan. I'm always talking some nonsense on there. So
and I have shopped from Comics Conspiracy in the past. It was an outstanding experience despite living all the way across the country.
COVID.
Love to have you on sometime to talk about comic stores.
Yeah, of course.
And how
you actually do that.
How they're doing, how they keep alive, why they don't, what the future is. I think that'd be an awesome topic.
Oh, I've got all sorts of thoughts on that. COVID was, obviously a topic for another conversation, but boy, did COVID change a lot of stuff. Surprising, weird kind of silver lining to a really terrible situation. Comic stores are in a real interesting position right now. It's been weird. It's been a weird couple of years. I got nothing else to say, but a weird couple of years. So
we do need to do that episode. Actually, we should put it on the schedule for like October, November.
So
I'm down. I'm down.
We're going to have a real political conversation. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's great.
Check out Ryan's podcasts and check out Ryan on Twitter because there is definitely nonsense there. All right, thanks, man.
Thank you.